Hello everyone, Screenplay Archaeology host KiramidHead here. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to get some intro stuff out of the way. First things first, we are now part of the Fandom Lim Media podcast network, so I'm going to link their site down below. And that's why you would have just heard a promo for another podcast, because they're another one of the shows on the network. And as per usual, if you like the show and you'd like to know more, you can check out our social media pages on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and even Instagram now. The show also has a Patreon if you're willing to gift money, but you don't really need to if you don't want to. And we also have a Discord server, which you can join if you want to chat with, the group members there. So that link is going to be down below as well. So yeah, sit back, guys, and enjoy the show. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Screenplay Archaeology podcast. I'm your host, KiramidHead.
I am your guest, not host, Jake, of Hot Quality Content fame and author of The Devil's League and very handsome, muscular man.
And let's not forget, host of the Universal Monsters podcasts that I bum around on.
Yeah, not to mention.
Gotta drive up that SEO.
Yeah, serious revenue we're earning. I think we earned like 50 cents for the last one. It was pretty good. My bank account is big happy.
Well, you gotta start distributing them.
That's true. I gotta upload them to that site.
Yeah, we gotta figure that shit out. But we're talking shop. Tonight we're doing an episode that's been in the works for not as long as some of my episodes have been, because I literally just got this script like end of November last year. Literally, I was I think I got it like right before I left for like Thanksgiving break. And
oh, wow.
So yeah, this one just came up kind of fast because I figured, hey, this is going to be a big thing. So we're going to be covering a draft of Dune, dated 1980, written by Rudy Wurlitzer, and this is the version that Ridley Scott was going to direct. And to give you an idea of how interesting this version is in comparison to what we eventually got, it is actually a part 1 of 2 situation. Again, I think it's only been tried those 2 times, actually. This one, and then the movies we eventually got doing it as 2 movies.
Yeah, I mean, Dune, the first one, is easily the biggest book in the series. It's, it's like hundreds and hundreds of pages. But I was kind of shocked because when I was first reading this, I was like, oh, I can't wait to find the dividing line, where Denis Villeneuve's 2 halves start and end. And I was like, oh, wait, this is just the first Dune. God damn it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll get there. It goes on a little bit longer than Villeneuve's first one did, but it ends in a similar place to where the early draft of that movie did. There's like a 2018 draft that goes on a little bit longer than the movie did.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I usually would give plot synopses, but Dune has kind of been mainstreamed at this point, to the point that I don't really feel like I have to explain Dune. It's space, empire, family feuds. But this version has like a bunch of differences in how all that stuff is presented, which we'll get into as we go into it.
Yep.
But so, I mean, I could give, background contextual stuff. Like, I have a very odd history with Dune, because my introduction was the 2 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries from the early 2000s, which is an interesting way to go about it.
No, the reality of the situation is that anyone listening to this show right now has seen both Dunes.
Yeah, like almost everybody saw it.
Exactly.
So just to get right into the history of this, the attempts at making Dune into a movie, at which this is like the last step before the David Lynch film from the 80s. Like, it was literally this, and then it moved on to that.
Yep.
And it started in 1972, where you get producer Arthur P. Jacobs and his company Appjack International. They optioned the rights to Dune, and they optioned it in 1971, and they developed it through 1972. And of course, Appjack is known because they made the original Planet of the Apes movies. So, That's an intriguing setup. And to give the short version of this, basically, they talked to some writers, they did a couple treatments, which I do have 2 of those, and that could be a whole separate episode on its own. But the short version is they were working on it, a writer's strike came up, and then literally 3 days after the strike ended, Arthur P. Jacobs died of a heart attack. And then eventually, you know, the rights lapsed and it went to the French company that was going to make Jodorowsky's Dune. And there's a whole ass documentary on that if you want to get more information. I don't see any need to really go into that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's such a well-known thing at this point. Everybody's seen the concept art. But then that couldn't get funded, and eventually the rights got sold to Dino De Laurentiis. And that kind of brings us up to this. Only before that, they got Frank Herbert himself to write a script, which has been described as being very long, like 175 pages. Long, dense, and the dialogue was not very good or cinematic. And even Frank Herbert was like, yeah, I'm not a screenwriter, so the script is bad.
Yeah.
And so in here we get Scott. So in 1979, De Laurentiis hires Ridley Scott, who's just coming off of Alien, to direct. And Scott talked to some people about writing it. He said he had breakfast with science fiction writer Harlan Ellison, asked him to write the script, and Ellison, in his way, told him to fuck off, basically.
Yeah.
And so Ridley Scott hires this guy, Rudy Wurlitzer, who is from the family that made the instrument. And so we get this script, which is essentially part 1 of 2. Like I said, it's the first of like 2 times they tried this. Because like every other version out there that's like an unproduced version tries to do it in one film, be it like a shorter film that cuts a ton of stuff out or a longer film. It's interesting they do that.
Yes, it's kind of the only way to go with the first Dune book. It's funny because like when you see like the 6 Dune books on like a collection together, Dune 1 is like 1.5 inches thick, and then Dune 2 is like a centimeter thick. Like, it's a joke.
Oh yeah, Messiah is a very short book, to the point where like you could do it in 2 hours if you wanted to. You could do it in like, heck, the Children of Dune miniseries for the Sci-Fi Channel adapts both Messiah and Children as one miniseries, and does Dune Messiah in part 1 as 90 minutes, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's how that works. It's crazy that like just how long that first Dune book is in relation to the rest of the series, and how everyone who reads it is like, oh yeah, I can't possibly put it into one film. It's going to have to be like super long.
And even then, it's not that the plot is super complicated. It's mainly just that it's a ton of world building in there.
Tons of world building, tons of characters, tons of chapters that are just describing things around them. Like, you can call it world building, but it really is just like running in place.
Yeah, it's a lot of like, here's this school, here's this house, and it's great. But like, I mean, of course, it poses a challenge when you're trying to turn all that into a movie. And then you get things like the David Lynch movie that opens with this lengthy monologue about all the exposition that doesn't really explain anything.
Oh God, Lynch's Dune.
Yeah, it does have the one really funny moment where she fades out and then fades back in and goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you."
I know, it's crazy that Lynch's Dune, Jodorowsky's Dune, and Ridley Scott's Dune, of the 3, easily the most boring one got produced.
Yeah, and it's a movie where there's things I like about it, but it's one of the weaker Lynch movies for sure.
At least he didn't do it in 2 parts. It's got that going for him.
Oh, could you imagine Lynch in 2 parts?
No, I imagine Lynch in 4 hours like he wanted.
Well, I mean, he actually did do a draft that was that would have split it into 2 parts. I haven't read the whole thing, but I just glanced at the end and I'm like, yep, that ends in the same point.
Yeah.
But so to get into the script, we have... So it's Dune in all caps with quotes around it. So,
yep.
Dune?
Dune, question mark?
Screenplay by Rudy Wurlitzer, copyright October 1980. So this is either... I'm not sure where this falls, whether this is like a first draft or like a later draft. Like, the only thing we really know about this version of Dune is something that's not in this draft, and I guess I'll get there when we get to it. But Frank Herbert and Brian Herbert both went off on it in one of their interviews. So it's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And I just want to say, I normally don't comment too much on formatting, but this was super easy to read and take notes on because the margins are super wide. They are.
The pages have been scanned in, and you can see like the 3-hole punching on the left, and then some pages, like it has nothing to do with anything in the script, but like I think it's like page 40 something. It's like scanned like almost at 90 degrees, which is just like, whoa, like a jarring thing.
Yeah, I've actually have at least one script where only half the page has been scanned, like the rest of it was just fucked up. And I have another one where like the page got like placed on like whatever the photocopier they were using in the 90s or whatever this was, and like the page is at like an angle, so you can see like the innards of the photocopier.
Crazy.
But so it opens on a dream montage, as you do in a Dune thing. And it's showing a desert with black rock formations and dust storms forming phantom armies for an instant. So we're getting vision of the future, essentially. And we get a hawk with the all blue eyes soars over the desert where birds are diving at insects on the ground. And a sound emerges from under the sand, which sets the birds and insects into a fury before the desert turns blue and something explodes from the sand. So we're getting foreshadowing to the worms this early.
You know, what's funny is, like, everyone knows what that is, but, like, in the 80s or whatever, everyone would be like, whoa, what's that in the sand? I don't know anything about this world.
Yep. And so we then go to a bedroom in Castle Caladan on the planet Caladan, and it mentions it's raining outside. And that is, like, the way they have decided to portray this planet in this version is raining literally all the time.
That's an interesting idea for a planet, but, like, a lot of times in, like, space opera stuff, like, they'll be like, this planet only has one weather condition, and then that one has another weather condition, and it's like nothing else.
Yeah, it's Star Wars planet.
Star Wars, the Star Wars problem, where it's like, you look at Earth, like, you got, like, every weather condition in just America alone, let alone the rest of the world. So, like, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense.
And so we go to Paul Atreides, who is not quite 7, who in this version is described with blonde hair and light blue eyes, which is an interesting physical change because it kind of undermines the moment when his eyes would turn blue later on.
That's kind of my thought process on that. Like, wouldn't you want him to have, like, dark eyes so it's like a contrast?
No, we'll just have it change from one shade of blue to a completely different shade of blue.
It's blue, but then also the whites of the eyes are blue too, so it's just a little different.
Yeah, they've never quite gotten the white of the eye part in any of the versions of it yet on film.
No, I like what Timothée Chalamet's looks like, but, you know, it could be cooler.
Yeah, and then you get, in the first Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, they went fucking insane with the glowing eyes.
I have only ever seen the knife fight from that series, and it's not that bad, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's not. It's a series where the first series especially is very low budget, but you can tell they kind of compensated for it by treating it kind of like a stage play, and they do some kind of cool stuff with the lighting. And then there's just, why the fuck are they all wearing giant hats?
I know, some serious hats going on.
I mean, if you've never seen it, guys, look up screenshots from that, and you will see nobody gets spared from the giant hat.
Not a soul on Earth.
Maybe it's only the souls on Earth, because Earth is lost in the Dune future.
Not a soul on the planet where it only rains and nowhere else.
Yes. And so he suddenly awakes from his dream, and so his mother, Jessica, soon appears in the room. And we get this weird moment where, like, her robe is coming open, and it's, like, mentioning her physique, and I'm like, are we doing, like an Oedipus thing here?
God, I hope not.
And it's like, but then it's like, oh, the Reverend Mother is there to test him, and that makes her afraid because she used to be her teacher. And so this script just throws you into it.
Yeah, so this is like one of my first kind of like holy shit moments where it's like, if you're adapting Dune and you want to do it as one movie, which is still what I thought this was at the time, just one movie about the one book, this isn't that bad of a way to do it, just all things considered. Like, the pace is pretty good.
Yeah.
Given that Dune's book's pace is, like, glacial. But, like, there's no way around how awesomely Denis translated it with, like, his 5.5 hours of doing it, because he could do that. But, like, if you're doing it as, like, again, when I read the script, I thought it was going to be one movie and it was just going to do the whole book. I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of the way to do it. And then we'll get there when we get there. But, like, it was quite a surprise.
Also, Paul is a lot younger in this sequence.
Yeah.
Which makes it more fucked up when you think about it.
Yeah, but it's always kind of been fucked up.
Yeah. But she takes Paul to the Great Hall and remains outside. And so the Reverend Mother is inside, seated at a desk with a black box on it. Which, by the way, if you've never seen the horror movie Phantasm, he totally read Dune and copied this scene almost beat for beat. It's hilarious. Like, there's literally a scene where the main character sticks his hand in a box and feels pain.
Really? I have not seen it, so no, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, that's a good movie, but you get to that scene, it's like, what the fuck? And she tells him she wants to put his hand inside the box, which will cause pain, that will make him want to die, and then have any alcohol as a test of his inner self. And she eventually uses her power of the voice to force him to do so, while she holds a needle to his neck. And none of this stuff gets, like, its special names in this version. They just kind of leave that unsaid.
Right, naturally.
And she eventually uses her power of the voice to force him to do so. He gets through the pain by saying the Litany of Fear, which is intercut with Jessica mouthing it outside as she watches through a grate, which is kind of similar to how the movie ended up doing it.
Yes, that is. Yeah, oddly enough, that is true.
A little less dramatic, but
Yep.
and so the Reverend Mother has him remove his hand, which is uninjured, and she explained that if he failed and removed his hand too early, she would have killed him with the needle. Which she does call it the Gom Jabbar here. Oh, she calls it the Gom Jabber here. That's how it's spelled.
It's a gom, but it also jabs, so it's the gom jabber. I get it.
Yeah. And she then sends Paul out of the room and meets with Jessica and tells her Paul may be the one who will shorten the way. So I don't think they use the term Kwisatz Haderach in this version. But
well, you got to appeal to the masses, even though this is extremely high concept.
And that she should continue his training, and that she should be prepared to sacrifice everything if he is. But she's not unkind in her attitude towards her female student here. She's like nice about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul is now, even though he's only 6 years old, he's a little moody little shit in this next couple scenes.
He is quite a bit. And then there's a montage coming up. After the montage, which spans years, he's also equally as moody as he previously was.
It's really funny because in the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, they hire like a 24-year-old actor to play him. But instead of just going like, oh, he's just a young guy, they try and make him look younger by wearing stupid clothes with a stupid haircut. It's like, oh my God. And
he's James McAvoy, wasn't it?
No, James McAvoy plays his son in Children of Dune.
Ah.
And he's really good.
He is that one of the best parts.
And so, but no, he's even moodier in that than he is in this.
Yep.
But okay, so he tests his ability with the voice to compel a guard to hand over his sword. And then he sneaks into a bedroom where Duncan, his fighting tutor, and in this version, he's a combination of Duncan Idaho and Gertie Halleck. They just put those two characters together, which is interesting because you're doing it as two movies. So you would have time.
You would absolutely have time. And like, you're going to piss off either fans of the books or fans of, I don't know, good movies, the other aspect of that. I don't know what their plan was with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because all the drafts that try and do it as one movie, except for like one outline from like 2008, all have them as separate characters.
I'm sure.
Which is something I could kind of understand if you were condensing it down to a single film. Like sometimes you got to make hard choices like that, but when you're doing two movies, you don't really need to.
You have no excuse at all because like, the two movies thing really comes out of nowhere. I would really hate to be disappointed in like the theater and being like, oh boy, I'm gonna go see Dune, and then it does the part one thing, and I'm like, motherfucker. At least I knew that Denis was only doing half of.
Yeah, and so Duncan is lying asleep in the bed. He basically is Duncan Idaho with like a couple of the traits of Gertie Halleck. He's kind of like short and ugly and scarred, but he has like Duncan Idaho's kind of swagger. But Paul begins to swing his sword at him, and then Duncan leaps from the bed naked and strikes back at his attacker, and just stopping himself from killing the boy. So we have muscle-bound sword master naked fighting a 6-year-old boy.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll play really well on screen.
This will be really fucking funny. Duncan is sworn to make Paul into a great warrior, and the boy says he wants to start the training now. So they go to the armory where they begin their training with sticks, which leads into a training montage where 14 years pass and Paul has now mastered the sword. And there are more methods to learn, but for now, let's go get drunk. Also, interesting thing they left out, there's no personal shields in this.
Yeah, I always assumed that was going to be like added in after the fact, and like maybe that wasn't part of like the script and there was no dialogue, but like, no, it literally isn't in the story at all.
There's
I don't know. I feel like that's like integral to the lore because like the whole reason that there aren't like guns or projectiles is because of that. So we've reverted back to using knives. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there is a mention of a force field shield later on, but that's it. It's over the whole building.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we get introduced to Dr. Yue and Thufir Hawat, the family Mentat, who are under a pagoda-like structure in the castle's rock garden, playing a 3-dimensional chess-like game. So this is probably your favorite scene.
Yeah, best scene in all of cinema. Yep, go on.
And we get very little intro to who and what these guys are.
Astoundingly small.
They're just two smart dudes who like to play chess.
Yep. What more do you need in a film?
Yeah. And so Lady Jessica enters the garden, followed by 3 doting young women. And there's this weird moment where it's an interesting idea where Yue is noting that like the court women joining the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, which they only refer to by name like this once, I think. And it's like, they view it as like an attractive alternative to court life. And then Hawat points out that she can't recruit students as the school is officially banned. And this is never elaborated on. Is it banned on Caladan? Is it banned everywhere?
Nope, that's just one of those lines of dialogue to like, hey, there's a bigger world. We're not going to get into it though.
Which that knowing the book doesn't help because that's very much not the case.
Absolutely not the case.
They're so not banned, they have a whole TV show about them.
They do.
And then Yue, he tries to sow suspicion in Hawat regarding Jessica's loyalties, but while he's too busy talking, the Mentat wins the chess game.
All good scene should end.
It would be really funny if they made this and you could watch it and tell me if the rules make sense.
Well, look, that is never the script's fault. Unless the script says the king goes into an illegal square. Like, it's always how it's...
Unless it's that scene in Without Remorse where Michael B. Jordan interrupts a chess game and says, pawns can't kill kings.
Oh, God.
I'm like, no, you can't. No one kills kings in chess.
They sure do in Dune.
Yeah. Oh, boy. And so suddenly, and I have no idea what's actually going on in this scene anymore, suddenly the sky darkens and the rain intensifies and the gardener kneels down, takes off his hat and looks into the sky, saying that the Emperor of the Universe is now dead. That's a change. This whole next section is bizarre.
Certainly sounds that way.
Yeah, and so later, Paul and his father, Duke Leto, which this is weirdly his introduction, speak on a platform in the castle above a vast chasm, where the Duke tells his son that great struggles for power among the great houses are coming in the wake of the Emperor's death, but the challenge will prove rewarding, and they also have to head to the Imperial Court in accordance with the Emperor's wishes. And we just hard cut. We hard cut to them on planet is never named.
Yeah, so like getting back to the point I made earlier where it's like this actually is kind of the right thing to do if you're going to make it one movie, and then they don't make it one movie. So why did you hard cut? Why did you mash characters? Why did you zoom through the entire story? I don't get it.
And they just completely invent this whole thing that's coming up where it's so weird I couldn't even possibly take enough notes, or I would have like a whole page just talking about how bizarre this is. So we go to Leto, Jessica, Paul, Hawat, Yue, Duncan, and their whole ass retinue as they descend on like a slab of rock that's like an elevator through orange clouds into what they refer to as the Emperor's Inner Kingdom, a ring of mountains surrounding a mystic circle with 3 sets of walls within it with a glowing thing in the center. And they pass through a set of pillars and a powdery luminescence which is designed to keep all but the great houses from entering. So, genetically coded cocaine?
Well, I'll tell you what, like, you describing that would actually sound cool, like, if it was, like, actually made in this time period. It was going to be made in the 80s, and they would have, like, built it or made a set or something. Yeah. But if it were made today on, like, a much smaller budget than Blockbuster, it would have been done as cheaply with VFX as possible, and it sounds like every single, like, blatant, big energy beam thing staring at a guy, the guy stares back, everything explodes, just nonsense, so...
And I mean, this is the same producer as Lynch's Dune, and you know how the space travel looked in that movie.
Yeah, like that's the era I'm talking about of like, oh, cool, it's practical, but the creative choices were the problems with that one.
It's weird that movie looks as kind of bad as it does in places when they were funneling money that was supposed to go to other movies into that one.
Yep, because put all your eggs in one really, really bad basket.
And... So they go to the final chamber where the houses have gathered around the deceased emperor, lying on a bier atop a hill. And then a late arrival is announced. I don't even know why they're making a big deal about a late arrival when they only just showed up. And the Harkonnens enter, namely the Baron, his Mentat Piter, and his nephew Fade Routha. There's no Raban in this version, even though we have 2 movies.
I'm glad Fade gets introduced. That's nice. He wasn't even in Dune Part 1.
No, he wasn't. Literally, his only mention in that early 2018 draft is they capture an Atreides soldier, and it's like says in the description, by the way, he's going to be the guy who fights Fade in the arena in Part 2.
Nice little moment.
Yep, and so this is especially notable as they were banned from the Imperial Court, but Yue points out that the court is now no more, and Jessica tells Paul to beware the Harkonnens as the Baron already intends to rule, and Paul responds that he has seen them in his dreams. As we see in the David Lynch movie, where most of Sting's screen time is repeating the same dream.
Oh my god, Sting.
It's okay, and so this is me just summarizing this shit, because we get a lot of information here. And so Leto climbs the hill to make an offering when the eyeless medium sitting next to the bier speaks in the Emperor's voice. and 6 priests bring a curtain around the beer for a private audience, but one of them, in the Baron's employ, listens in. And he's not subtle about it at all. He's literally looking over at the Baron, like, winking.
They're as blatantly evil as you can get in this adaptation.
Like, no, but more so, not quite as bad as the Lynch version, where they're just cackling all the time.
And they're, like, all dying of diseases.
Yes.
Except Sting, who's, like, perfectly a man.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is like out in the open surrounding a hill. How does nobody else notice that this is going?
Also, like, you said that, like, a lot of information is being dumped all at once. You're on page, like, what, 24, 25? Like, this
Something
is early
like that, yeah.
shit. This is like, we're barely 15, 20 minutes into this fucking movie, and, like, so much has been thrown at you so far.
Which is weird, because I think it kind of evens out later on and gets better.
It does. The pace does slow down, like, in the second half.
Kind of like the Villeneuve movie, where, like, it gets a little slow in the second half.
Well, the Villeneuve movie, like, it's at least consistent, where,
Yes.
like, it starts out, it's got a great introduction. It weaves in exposition in really good ways, but I don't know. This script is not the worst. I've seen the worst. It's 1984's Dune. It's not the worst way you can adapt it, but again, like, I feel there's a lot of tonal shifts. There's a lot of speeding up, slowing down.
Yeah.
And now you're about to get over a hilltop where you start just, like, very slowly cascading towards the rest of the film.
Now, my one criticism of Dune Part 1 is you could have trimmed the visions down in the third act by, like, half. It's like, okay, we get it. Zendaya has feet.
Yeah, right.
Quentin Tarantino's already said he's not going to watch the movie. But okay, let's where the fuck am I? Okay, so yeah, the Emperor's spirit communicates through a medium and says he's left the universe in quite a mess and deeds the planet Dune to Leto, which is never called Arrakis, even though the capital is still called Arrakeen.
Yep, which, you know, maybe would be referenced in part 2, which never existed or got written at all.
And but saying if he could rule the desert planet, he can be a powerful force for good in the universe. And then the voice fades. Leto descends the hill. The beer begins to glow. Light flashes and blue smoke appears as the Emperor's body is turned into a pillar of red light, which ascends to the cloudless sky and disappears into the void of space.
Right. Yep.
What happened? What just happened?
God, I know this is gonna be like the most, like, mindfucky mid-80s like Legend. This would be like Ridley Scott's Legend.
Oh, I've had Legend described to me as like the experience of watching it. It's so strange and off kilter that watching it almost gives you the sensation of having brain damage.
I wouldn't go that far, but, like, it is definitely weird. It is out there.
It is a very, very strange movie, and even Tom Cruise is weird in that movie, which is...
Yeah, like, that is a role he would never do. Like, he must have been so young, he was just like, sure, fuck it, let's do it. But, like,
dude, imagine...
That is such an un-Tom Cruise role.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past Ridley Scott to announce Legend 2.
I mean, Gladiator 2 came way too late, so why not?
Yeah, it's like, okay, Tom Cruise, you gotta fit into the little shorts again.
No, let's do Dune 2, but it's the sequel to Ridley Scott's Dune 1, which did not get made. But they actually make Dune 2.
Yes, it's okay. We're almost out of this. I got one more scene we got to get through, and then I can just talk about my whole issue with this section.
Right, and then the whole episode is over.
Yes, and so Fade Routha then approaches Leto, extending an offer to meet with Baron Harkonnen after the service ends, and he accepts as he thinks, meeting with him face to face is might reveal some of his intentions. And a lot of the scripts put this in here where they go to like the Imperial planet and the two of them will have like a face-to-face meeting. I understand wanting to do that. It's like get these two forces in one room for more than just the one scene later.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are the status of smartphone communication in this version of Dune? I don't know if it's equal with the other iterations.
So equal as 0?
As in zero, I don't know if they have like ways of communicating in this version.
I know in Dune Prophecy they kind of do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they get information between I forget exactly how they do it because a lot of stuff goes on in that show. But okay, and so Leto and the Baron meet over dinner, which is safe because they're on sacred ground and can't attack each other here, so they're Highlanders.
Yes, that is how that works. Yeah.
Yes, it's basically the Baron. They basically turn down the poison snooper, and so the Baron mentions the loss of the Emperor, hoping that the Committee of Seven rules as well as he did. And he then gets to the point and offers an equal partnership in the spice mining on Dune, which he claims will be too difficult for the Atreides to manage alone. And so Leto turns him down, saying he will do what is best for the Imperium, and any deal with the Baron would be contrary to that. Okay, so this whole sequence, The Emperor is dead, so he's not involved in any of the plotting against the Atreides. He turns into energy and goes into the sky like it's fucking 2001.
It's not really addressed again either. Like it just happens and they move on.
Yes, and then when the Sardaukar show up later on, that's not addressed. I don't know what the Inner Kingdom is. I don't know anything about this Committee of Seven. Maybe that would have been in the second part.
Yep.
I mean, this just unravels so many plot threads to the point where I don't know how you can even do the ending of Dune.
I know it doesn't even line up with the book. And not for nothing, but like I love a good exchange, right? I love a good scene where big wigs sit down and have like a nice back and forth, and they're all talking about power. But like even I, as a guy who did not hate this scene when reading it, the Baron just goes on and on, and I swear to God, like maybe half of his dialogue you could just cut, and it would flow better. It would feel like for a script that's cutting out so much already. This is like shocking that this is all in here.
Yeah, it cuts out so much and then adds all this crap here, and it's just like
I know. Like, what, are you even adapting Dune at that point, or are you just?
But I mean, with the Emperor gone, how do you even do the ending of Dune? Because I mean, there's no establishment of his daughter here.
I know, that's like arguably the biggest plot point towards the third act there of the book. Obviously.
Yeah, of the book. I think we finally have a worse emperor in all of the adaptations.
No, I think the Dune 1984 still wins.
Oh, worst emperor?
It wins in a lot of regards. Yeah, gotta be.
Doesn't help that that's also a very weird scene to open that movie with.
Oh my God, yes.
The guild navigator is a vagina-faced sea lion, and I don't even know.
If you told me to tell you what happens in 1984's Dune, I would just tell you the plot because I know the plot of the story of Dune, but not because of that movie.
I remember the weird random shit.
That's all of it. What are you talking about?
But okay, so back on Caladan, another hard cut. The Duke and his retinue, along with 3 companies of Atreides soldiers, board their family frigate and fly it up to the massive guild Highliner, which is to transport them to Dune. And the Highliner departs, and while en route, Yue and Paul visit the ship's control room, and they watch as the navigator, a mutated fish-like man, takes a spice pill and enters a trance. And a nearby guild official explains that the navigator uses the predictive qualities of the spice to chart a safe course through space. And I find
said Dr. Yue, and I've been pronouncing in my head as Dr. Yaw the whole time.
Yeah, well, I have no idea what the actual pronunciation is. I think the adaptations just guess.
They sure do.
But this whole sequence, this is something that I find interesting, that almost every adaptation of Dune, produced or unproduced, just throws the whole thing about the navigators right at you at the beginning like it's common knowledge. The book, that's like a twist at the end. They don't even talk about it, and the whole mutation thing doesn't come up until Dune Messiah.
Yep. Nope, not even relevant.
I just find it interesting that they just all go like, yeah, let's put this piece of information here.
Yeah, it is odd the way that they structured the exposition. I think, again, I already said it, but like the exposition was delivered so much more cleverly in even though it was Dune Part 1. 2 didn't really need exposition because they already had Part 1 out. And it was delivered arguably the worst possible in 1984 with that monologue at the beginning. This is somewhere between the two, where it's a lot better than that, but nowhere near as clever and brilliant as Dune Part 1.
Yes, and so then we get Yue saying that, oh, I tried taking some spice once, but he saw too much too soon and refuses to do so again. Also, they don't mention the fact, it kind of goes unmentioned in pretty much all versions, that the main use of spice throughout the universe is is to slow aging.
It's slow aging so you can transport between places that are really far.
Yeah,
which is kind of my understanding of it.
But it's like people around the universe take it because it makes them age slowly. But it also gives you a certain amount of foresight, which is what the guild uses it to do to chart a safe path through space.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's for transportation. Yeah, but in a different way.
It's for transportation, but the main use for people is they fucking snort it to stay young.
Yeah. So it's got like 3 different superpowers that it just gives you.
Yes.
All unrelated to each other.
Not bad for something to worm shit out.
I know. Not bad for basically just being drugs.
Yeah. And so as the Highliner approaches Dune, Jessica and Leto, they discuss Paul, how he's mentioned remembering a past life, and how he seems more like Jessica at times. None of this really pays off.
No, not even a little bit.
It then turns to the subject of Jessica having promised to Bene Gesserit a daughter, but gave Leto a son instead out of love. I'm like, this is more exposition. And they then make plans to have a daughter next, but we're going to wait to bang until Dune is secure.
Of course, naturally.
There's a lot of them planning this.
There's a lot of them planning to bang.
Yes.
Oh my god.
It's like in Fun with Dick and Jane, where they're like, let's have sex on Saturday.
My god, Fun with Dick and Jane. Wow.
That was just something popped into my head.
I have not thought about that movie in maybe like 15 years. Jesus Christ.
And now it's going in the pile for dealer's choice.
Naturally, yeah. Well, it's funny. I'll always, this is nothing to do with Dune. I'm so sorry, audience, but I'll always remember Fun with Dick and Jane because I think that was the first movie that I had bought a ticket to a different movie and watched it, and then walked out of that showing and walked into Dick and Jane and just watched the rest of that.
All right, and so they land on Dune in short order, intentionally early to test the readiness of the people there, so they're being kind of dickish. And then they ride through the city of Arrakis in the midst of a sandstorm, which those aren't supposed to get into the city. There's a whole thing about that, but I'm not gonna be super nerdy about it.
Sure.
And then he sees a prospector get blown off his feet by the storm. So bye, Stinky Pete.
Womp womp.
You're out of your box. And while unpacking, Leto throws a sword at the carved snakehead above the fireplace in the castle, saying, "Here I am, and here I remain."
Yeah, extremely badass.
You showed that wall decoration who's boss.
He was also like alone.
That line is in the book, but it's contextually different.
Of course, much like the entirety of this script.
Yeah. And so later, Leto, Paul, and Duncan, they fly out via ornithopter, which that's one thing I love about the Villeneuve movies is that we finally got ornithopters with flapping wings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But they fly out there to a weather station to meet... This is another thing they just throw in there in all the adaptations where because in the book there's this whole thing about how Dr. Kynes is secretly Liet, the Fremen leader, but they just don't include that. They just call him Liet Kynes immediately.
Yep.
But they meet Liet Kynes, the Imperial ecologist and arbiter of dispute. He takes them inside to outfit them in proper desert gear, and this part's really cool. He shows them the skeleton of a sandworm his people are assembling, which I thought that was a cool addition.
That was pretty neat. I'm loving imagining that.
Especially coming from Ridley Scott just after Alien.
Oh yeah, serious stuff.
With H.R. Giger designing the worms.
Yep. And it'd be like so big. It'd be like the size of like a house.
Yes, and there's one piece of his concept art for the worms which is interesting, but it's also baffling because I shit you not is literally a sandworm chowing down on a giant ass penis. I don't know what's going on with that.
Listen, look, sometimes you need some concept art just for personal use, not about the movie at all.
And it's not even like vaguely phallic like the xenomorph. It literally is just a giant penis. It's
definitively phallic.
It is a BBC. In fact, I'm going to look that art up and I'm going to show it to you.
Who doesn't love some nice definitive phallic nature?
I mean, this is the only piece of art I think from this version I have ever seen, and it's going to make it like a bitch to make a thumbnail. Because, like, I can't put a giant dick on my YouTube thumbnail.
I mean, not for nothing, but your thumbnails look like they take maybe 30 seconds in Photoshop.
They take, like, 20 minutes.
Really?
The time, okay. Well, I mean, it takes some time, but it doesn't take that much time. But, I mean, it's just hard gathering images sometimes. Because I used to spend more time on them. Because I can't draw.
I used to download and upload, or download and place every single image. But now I just, like, right-click copy and then Control-V right into Photoshop.
But no, this is literally what it looks like.
Oh, boy. Nope, I like Denise better. I like the popcorn bucket better.
So you don't like the worm?
I don't like what's entering the worm's mouth.
No context. I don't know what that means.
It looks like someone's just getting ready to... They're currently putting on the condom. It's happening.
So I'm probably just going to have to put the Screenplay Archaeology logo over the dick.
I bet the pitch meeting for Ridley Scott was like, hey, Ridley, we got a script for Dune. And Ridley's like, I don't really know. And then they're like, well, you can make it a giant dick. And Ridley's like, hold up, wait a minute. Phallic imagery in my sci-fi film, that's like my whole thing. I got you.
Way more like northern and incomprehensible. But so among them is it's interesting we introduced Chani here early. So that
I noticed that, yeah.
I like that because it gives her and Paul more screen time together.
Yep.
That is actually a good change, and it points out that both of them have the blue eyes from spice ingestion.
Of course.
And so Paul asks if there's a connection between the worms and the spice, and they're both like, no. What makes you say that foolish thing? Who could possibly know?
Absolutely not. No way. No way. No how. No sir. Not I. No thank you. I will pass, sir.
I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud. And so Kynes then provides the Duke and his men with still suits, which help recycle the body's water in the desert, so they are literally drinking their own pee.
Naturally, that's in all interpretations.
And
then
poop.
what's really interesting here, too, is you have this scene. Well, I guess I'll let you talk about it, but you're talking about it right now. But it's a scene where Paul's like, nah, it's the first time I wore a still suit, bro. And I swear, I didn't rewatch anything from Denis Villeneuve, but I swear this is the exact, like, beat for beat, word for word scene. So this must be how it is in the book, and both adaptations have just, like, taken it verbatim.
Yes, that's one of the things where it's like, oh, you fitted its still suits, you fitted its slip style around the Wapala. Who showed you how to do this? He's like, oh, it seemed the right way.
It seemed the right way. And I remember that, like, that's exactly what Timothée Chalamet said. So it's like, oh, I guess that scene, they just decided not to change that scene in any iteration of Dune.
Yes, it is. And so, yeah, he gets it right on the first try. And so here we get another bizarre scene.
Are you? Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We're going, yeah. I told you I had a specific reference ready to go for like weeks. And so back at the castle, Jessica meets with the housekeeper, a Fremen, and I just put the desert people of Dune because they don't explain that in the script, named Shadout Mapes, and goes over to the house. And then that's quite a name.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's like, I imagine like a YouTube vlog being like, shout out my boy Mapes.
And so she goes over to household work with her before sensing that she's carrying a weapon on her. And Mapes says it was meant as a gift if she turned out to be the one, and removes it. It removes and unsheaths a Chris knife from her skirts, which is made from the tooth of the worm, or Shai-Hulud as the Fremen call it. And Jessica can only sheath it once it is drawn blood, so Mapes opens her bodice, revealing that she has 3 breasts.
This scene, this scene goes like, it's like calm, and then it gets ridiculously high tension violent, and then it goes right back to being calm over the course of like,
yes,
like,
it's
crazy.
I'm just gonna say the script has a 3-breasted woman. It's dated 1980, 10 whole years before Total Recall came out.
Yeah, absolutely. This could have been the pop culture 3-boob sci-fi film. Other than that,
and then it would have a shitty remake by Len Flairman.
No, because what would happen is if this movie got made and that had the 3-booby woman first, right? Then in Denis' version, because obviously we're pretending those got made too, they'd have to put a reference in there, just like Total Recall reboot had a reference to the 3-boob woman in that one.
Well, I mean, Denis' version also puts in references to the Lynch movie.
That is true in very subtle ways.
But I mean, it's just, she's got 3 boobs, and we don't address that.
Nope, not at all. I mean, let's be real. Do you need to address the 3rd boob? I vote no.
I mean, it's not in the book. I mean, Jessica doesn't even find it weird. She's just like, oh, 3 boobs. And so Jessica cuts her and draws blue blood, which is a new thing for this version.
Yep. Also kind of misleading considering that, like, we at this point don't know why spice is relevant, and it's relevant to being blue-eyed and her blood is blue, so we're just
spice is relevant to the guild. No, like, we know that.
Like where it comes from. Like, we don't know it's worm poop yet. So yeah. I feel like the average audience would just be like, this is just some weird, confusing shit.
And the blue blood, I can see the logic of it, but
yeah,
like, oh, it gets into your blood and it stains your eyes blue. Would it also stain the blood blue? I can see the logic, but I don't know how it would play. And also, you just know this would have been a weird looking prosthetic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know who the effects person would have been, because I don't know if they got that far.
Well, they got the concept art. I mean, what more do you need?
Yeah, but we don't have concept art of that.
Why not? We got concept art of what you sent me, and it's arguably more sexual.
Fucking blowjob, man. It's funny you referenced a condom, because in one of the upcoming episodes, I'm going to have to talk about a condom.
Oh, God.
But so Kynes shows the spice harvesting factory ships to Leto and his entourage, and points out the chemical pollution that spills out of them. And that's one thing about this version that's interesting, is that it does delve into the ecological themes of the book a little more than the other adaptations do.
I did notice that, yeah.
I do think it's cool that they emphasize that a little bit. But he bemoans, nobody respects the balance of the planet. And I just got a fucking flashback to The Substance right now.
That's true. That's very true.
And Leto implies an offer that would give Kynes the power to fix this. And they then fly out on an ornithopter to inspect a factory ship at work, partially buried in the desert sands. I think that's a cool image, that it like burrows in.
Mm-hmm.
It also saves special effects money, because you can just bury the parts of the model that look like crap.
Now there's the real reason.
But the crew has detected worm sign, but have lost control of their carrier. So Paul suggests they take as many as they can on the thopter, even removing seats to fit more. And 2 will have to stay behind, and Kynes and Chani volunteer as they know the desert well. And I thought that was a cool moment, cool beat.
Yep.
And as the worm swallows the factory, Paul watches the 2 of them slip away in admiration. So later, Paul and Duncan are walking through a square. We just hard cut to them walking through a square in Arrakeen, where Duncan spots a prospector whom he recognizes as a Harkonnen agent. And they track him through the alleys and side streets to a trading post where several city Fremen are waiting outside for water, and there is one among them who stands out, Stilgar, a proud desert warrior, who is not a complete idiot in this version.
In this specific version, yes.
Paul and Duncan follow the agent inside, where a bunch of hired killers gathered dressed as miners. You know what this is?
Oh, God.
This is that scene in Star Wars where Han Solo chases a couple of stormtroopers and runs into a whole room of them.
Yes, it absolutely is that scene.
And so we get they wait as the agent talks to the merchant who owns the place. And when they try to follow the agent as he leaves out the back door, the hired killers attack. And a big fight breaks out. Paul and Duncan just lay waste to their enemies. And Stilgar just kind of walks in during the scuffle and then saves Paul from getting shot by the merchant with a missile. This guy just has a fucking, grenade launcher on him. And he makes it clear he's following the same man as they are, who killed 3 Fremen in the desert and stole spice from them. And they can follow him as he tracks the agent if they wish, but he will not help them as he doesn't view the Atreides any differently from the Harkonnens. And so they follow Stilgar to a spice auction where he captures the agent, announces his crimes to the crowd, and then just beheads him with a crysknife.
Like you do.
I think that's a decent, kind of cool introduction.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just weird how they just hard cut to the scene. So we get a bunch of short scenes, Jessica meditating, Leto inspecting the interior of a spice factory, which I actually thought that was really cool that they address having to separate the spice from the sand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't see that a lot.
I like that detail.
Yep.
And so, the guard around the castle changing, etc. And Jessica then meets with Leto in his chambers, and they decide, we're going to do it tonight. We're going to bang when the elements are in proper conjunction.
Yeah, we'll keep talking about it. It'll definitely happen, haha.
And we then go to Paul, who is in the lesson with Yue, strapped to a machine, which is weird the way this thing is described. It's almost like it's like putting the info directly into his brain.
Yeah.
He's just strapped into this huge contraption.
It's like the thing from Rogue One, that big slimy monster.
Yeah. That was a weird moment in Star Wars where we had 2 movies in a row that had tentacle monsters in them.
I mean, Star Wars is no stranger to tentacle monsters, let's be real.
Yeah, and then so where are we? And then when an insect flies in, blinks like a firefly, seemingly sending a coded message to the doctor, which disturbs him. Subtle. He then encourages Paul to go out and learn for himself and offers to help disguise him so he can go out to the city unattended, like it's Aladdin.
That is the plot of Aladdin. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You said that, I was like, ha ha ha, it's kind of funny, but I said, no, wait a minute. Wait, he's onto something. Hold on.
And so Paul makes his way to the Fremen section of Arrakeen, goes into a spice den, just starts snorting fucking spice fumes and having visions. So he immediately is like, I get freedom from school, I'm going to go get high.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the correct answer.
And elsewhere, Yue takes a sandcraft into the desert. Yeah, there's more vehicles in this. I'll have a huge point about this later, but there's way more vehicles in this version.
Mm-hmm.
He follows the bug into a valley where more insects appear before a shadow appears overhead and a stair descends, which Yue then climbs. Foreshadowing.
Which who climbs? Wait, what?
Yue climbs up the stairs.
Oh.
And so Leto and Jessica, they finally get down to business in their quarters. Paul continues his wanderings in Arrakeen, entering an underworld kasbah where men are playing a game where they try to grab a ball before a little snake bites them. And it's just whatever. He just it's okay. So about them banging, and this is where they conceive Alia. This is the info that's out there about the Ridley Scott attempted Dune, is that apparently Frank Herbert read a third draft, and in that version they change it so that, I shit you not, Paul bangs his mother, and he's also Alia's father.
Oh, God almighty. Yeah, because first of all, Paul needs to be more of the most important guy of all time. Of course, he's got to be the direct father of ew. But then also ew. Ew. Why? How does that enhance the story of Dune?
I think the writer said something about how, he wanted to emphasize how Paul rejects societal norms. It's nah, what porn have you been watching, dude?
Bro, there are plenty of ways to reject societal norms, but not actually be a rebel or interesting in any way. And that's one of them.
Yeah, making him into a literal motherfucker.
You imagine? You can't arrest me. I fucked my car. Okay, that doesn't actually change anything.
What?
You're still a weirdo. Exactly.
I don't even know what you're referencing.
No, it was equally as absurd as what you said. If anything, mine's a little more tame.
Speaking of which, there is a Ridley Scott movie where Cameron Diaz fucks a windshield.
Which one is this?
This is The Counselor. Javier Bardem is inside the car. She climbs up onto the windshield, starts rubbing herself on it, and he describes it as like a tropical fish moving up the glass.
All right, I'm gonna keep it a buck. I don't believe you. I think you're making this up.
It's not a good movie.
Hold on. I need Google to confirm that you're not gaslighting me. Oh my god, it's real. Oh my god. Oh god.
Okay,
Whatever.
Back to our main event.
Sure.
Paul looks at the old woman running the game, has a Spike's vision where her face becomes Jessica's, then Chani's, and then the baby face of Alia, Paul's unborn younger sister, who says Muad'Dib, and her open mouth has the sound of a chanting crowd in it, and oh my god, is that a terrifying image.
Certainly.
Before he snaps back to reality, and hypnotizing the snake picks it up saying, "You shouldn't harm the little makers," which has no fucking context or meaning in this script, before putting it back in its shell. So we go back to the castle. Hawat and Yue are playing their game again while Yue cooks a sauce, which he pours over some meat and serves to Hawat, moving the poison snooper device aside. And so, bye, Hawat.
Yeah, right.
So Hawat starts to choke and grabs the snooper, discovering that Yue has poisoned him. And as Hawat dies, Yue explains that he used to work for the Baron, who administered the poison to all his close employees that required a daily antidote to keep them alive. And so he later arranged for Yue to take over as Paul's tutor and act as a spy. So he has a wholly different backstory and motivation here, which they've borrowed from what happens to Hawat in the book with the whole poison thing.
Yeah. Yes. The book is a fuzzy memory.
Yes, there's a whole thing where he goes like, Hawat, I'm going to poison you, and I'm going to have to give you the antidote every day or you're going to die. And then in the Lynch version, they went, you have to milk the antidote from a cat.
Yeah, because the book wasn't weird enough for Lynch. He had to make it infinitely weirder.
Yes, and I will say this, as anticlimactic and kind of lame as this is, at least Hawat gets a death scene here. He doesn't just disappear into the ether like in the new movies.
Yeah, I know, where he's like, oh my god, he's just like not even fucking there in Dune 2.
Yeah, not addressed because Villeneuve doesn't like even releasing his deleted scenes for some reason.
Nah, it's the definitive edition, even though it still exists. You may as well show us.
And so outside, 5 death commandos, having killed 2 guards, slip inside when the surrounding laser shield wall turns off briefly. So these death commandos, guys, no context for who they are. I have a theory about this because there's like 2 random references to Sardaukar later on. I'm willing to bet the revision previous to this, they were all just called Sardaukar, and then someone went, what the fuck is that? That doesn't mean anything. And so he changed it to Death Commandos, but he missed a couple.
Like you do.
Which, I mean, this is before Find Replace.
I guess so. You'd have to like remember things and comb through it.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't blame him missing like a couple lines, but just the whole fact that we have no context for this, because like, who are the Sardaukar? Who are the Death Commandos? Mm-hmm. So it's just the Emperor, it's just the Baron doing everything in this version, so there's no greater context.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Paul is still out in the city sitting by a fire when he has a Spike's vision of the castle set alight, and Atreides soldiers staked out to die in the desert, and a crowd chanting the name Muad'Dib before he snaps back to reality again and runs for the castle. So he literally survives this version because he spent all night out in the city getting high.
Now imagining fucking Ciaran Hinds, or no, Javier Bardem, watching this happen. He's just go, instead of Lisan Al-Gaib, it's Muad'Dib, Muad'Dib.
The memes of that are really funny.
Lisan Al-Gaib. It's the best thing ever.
Yes. just the zoom in on his face.
Well, it's so like static and like quiet beforehand, and then all of a sudden he just explodes with excitement.
And so Paul meets with Yue, who seems concerned he didn't stay out the whole night as recommended, before sending him off to his room. Leto awakes, hearing the sound of the shield dim, and then heads out into the castle, unable to find a sentry, before entering the servants' quarters and discovering Mapes dead from a stab wound. Mm-hmm. And Paul enters his room, where he spots a bat-like hunter-seeker with a cobra's head emerging from the headboard of the bed. So in this version, the hunter-seeker is like an animal.
Star Wars Attack of the Clones?
Yeah, actually.
Question mark? sorry, quotations Star Wars Attack of the Clones?
Why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me?
Oh, man. Xander likes those movies better than the original trilogy. Don't...
I mean, not the whole.
I guess.
What, you want me to put the link to his list in the fucking description
No,
box?
it's absolutely not relevant at all.
But no, where the fuck? But yeah, it darts towards Jessica as she enters the room, but Paul catches it and cuts its head off, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a sequence that's only in here because it's in the book, because they've completely changed the context and it has no meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But they then hear shouts and blasts and quickly leave the room. Leto rushes down the hallway, hearing the sounds of artillery, and is attacked by 2 death commandos, who he takes down with some effort. And so Yue comes up behind Leto, shoots him with a paralyzing dart, revealing his treason. 2 death commandos come crashing in, followed by Duncan, who takes them both down, along with a random Harkonnen soldier, which I don't know the difference between those two, who wanders in. This scene is just people wandering into the room and getting attacked.
It is. And you know what? Anytime there's a scene like that in media, I can't complain.
It's literally just someone walks in, 2 more guys walk in, fight. Someone walks in, 2 more guys walks in.
Exactly. What more do you need in a script, goddammit?
So he goes to help the Duke. Yue attacks him from behind, getting a wound in before Duncan cuts him in half.
Yeah. Which is ironic considering a scene later on.
Yes, that keeps happening. People keep getting cut in half in this thing. Like it's the easiest thing in the world.
Michael Bay's Transformers took a lot from 1980s Dune.
Fucking jazz. No, there's no Hugo Weaving here.
Depressing.
Oh, there might as well not have been any Hugo Weaving in those movies. He doesn't really add.
They changed his voice and nobody noticed.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
And so, okay, Paul and Jessica soon enter, and Leto, knowing that he's dead anyway, tells Jessica she must flee in the thopter with Paul. And so 2 Sardaukar troopers appear. These guys haven't been set up at all. I actually wrote that in my notes. And Paul and Duncan fight him while Jessica sticks a pill in Leto's mouth, telling him to bite down on it when he's brought before the Baron. So they've changed that a little, which will unleash a cloud of poison. And more Sardaukar come in through the window, so more people can stay in.
And guess what happens to them? They all immediately die.
Yes. And Jessica even picks up Leto's sword and beheads one of them.
Bro, this script is a party right now. I'm in it.
Yeah, before the trio flees.
And we got more guests. Let's go.
They fight through the castle, making their way to the Thopter pad, where Fade Routha appears, leading a platoon of Sardaukar. Mm-hmm. And so Duncan stays behind to provide a distraction. He gets chopped in half.
Dude, it's funny because, like, Duncan's like, oh, I'm going to hold him off. And then, like, the fight scene you see, you know, after all the guys keep showing up and dying, the fight scene you see is, like, it's literally like 2 sentences, which I can't criticize the script for because the book doesn't even show it at all. No. It just references him dying later, and it's like, what? Why would you not want to see that?
No, literally in the book, in like the second to last chapter, Raban's death is literally just some guy walks into the room and goes, Raban is dead, and doesn't give any more details. Yeah. He totally gets Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
I know. Like, one of the only things I remember from that book is like the Duncan scene where it's like, people are surrounding him and he's literally like, it's describing like he's about to fight for his life and die, and then it just continues with like a different chapter for like several, like many pages, and I'm just like, what did Duncan die? Like, what's going on?
I mean,
but whatever.
If you know the sequels.
That's true.
That's gonna be interesting.
It sure will, because my man is out there.
But so Paul and Jessica escape on the Thopter, which takes some damage as they take off. And so a series of scenes of Harkonnen takeover occur, including the killing of captive Atreides soldiers, the imprisonment of civilians in like a pen outside, and we never go back to that. And so the Baron has the still paralyzed Leto brought before him and wants to know where he sent Paul and Jessica, and tells Piter to torture the information out of him.
Bader.
And so, of course, as you do.
Peter gotta bend down to the Duke and feel his heart.
Leto bites down on the pill, poisoning Piter, while the Baron steals the Bashar Colonel's gas mask, sacrificing him to save himself as the room fills up with gas. That is the funniest way he could survive this scene.
Naturally.
Although the way he survives in Jodorowsky's storyboards is also really funny. He literally uses his suspensors to fly up to the ceiling so hard he crashes through a hole and makes a hole in it. It's just his head sticking out, and he's like, you fools! And we get this kind of interesting moment where a dying Piter crawls over to the Baron as he escapes the room, and the Baron says he'll miss him. You can kind of read this in a couple ways. You can read it as him being just sadistic and fucking with him for no reason. Yep. Or you could kind of read it as sincere. It would depend on how the actor plays it.
Yeah, depend on the direction they wanted to take.
Ridley Scott was not a good actor-director back in 1980, so...
Legend.
I mean, he says that. Like, he admits that to himself. He says in the Blade Runner commentary that a lot of those scenes are as weird as they are because he wasn't paying attention to directing the actors.
Well, he had a lot in his mind, you know. He was making one of the best sci-fi movies that people talk about, even though I don't really care about it much.
Ironically, another one Villeneuve would take over.
Another one he would take over and do a lot better than the first one.
I will dispute that. I think they're on par.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
But I mean, I can't. It's one of those things where 2049 is so good, I can't really dispute someone saying it's better because it really is that good.
I know. Just visually, that movie just sticks with you, you know?
And blah, blah, blah. And so he then heads to a Harkonnen command post and demands that Paul and Jessica be found and that the Atreides be exterminated. And I think this is the last time we see him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, pursued by Harkonnen thopters, Paul steers the vehicle into a sandstorm to lose them and forcing a crash landing in the desert. So what's really interesting about this is that we've basically rearranged a bunch of scenes that are all in the book and we've shifted them around.
Yep. And kind of what's funny about that too is that 1984's did the same thing.
Oh, having Duncan die in the castle?
Well, that and like just rearranging, like it adapts it like chapter 3, 4, 1, 5, 2. Like it's all just complete mishmash.
And Dahl and Jessica spend their daylight hours in a still tent where Paul asks her if she knows what she has done by making him a male Bene Gesserit, to which she says he must accept his destiny, and the audience just has to accept that sentence.
Naturally.
And Paul simply says he is controlled by other forces who say they must go on and live. And so as night comes, Paul emerges from the still tent looking at the double moons and finally allows himself to weep for his father, it's there.
Yep, it's definitely present.
And so they set off into the desert, decked out in still suits while staying in the still tent during the day, hoping that the Fremen will eventually find them. And they manage to attract a worm and flee to a rocky outcropping. Paul goes to face the worm, embracing the spice in his abilities, and he's able to make the worm turn away. And then when he faces Jessica, his eyes have turned a slightly different shade of blue.
Ooh, spooky.
So in this version, he can control the worms just by looking at them.
It's an interesting way to do it. I like in Denis' version where the worms don't even like care. Like you can hop on their back and grapple. They're just zooming. Who cares?
And that's like the book.
Yeah, that's just like the book too. And this it's like, yes, I see you, worm. I feel you.
Yep, and I mean that just kind of takes a little of the majesty away from the worms when you can just go that.
Well, you know what else takes the majesty away from the worms is when they suck a giant black dick in the concept art you sent me. I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there, you know. That's just how it is.
And all right, and so later on, so they're still crossing the desert. They're crossing a dune that begins to collapse, but they lose the pack with the still tent and all their supplies in the process. Oops.
Oopsies.
And they take shelter inside a cave, which turns out to be the mouth of a dead worm, which this is also something that would have been really cool visually.
Mm-hmm.
And where other desert creatures have congregated as well. And then there's this whole thing where the cave begins to fill up with sand and they're getting buried. Jessica gets attacked by a desert bird and they prepare for death, reciting the litany of fear. And then the wind suddenly stops. Jessica and Paul crawl out of the worm and see a shape approaching in the distance, which turns out to be a vehicle called a sand sled with 8 Fremen aboard led by Stilgar. So the Fremen in this have vehicles. I don't really like it. It's way too Star Wars.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the point, just like pacing wise, where if you don't realize this is a part 1, part 2 situation, then you're just like, there's no way that like we're running out of runtime. That too little has happened for this to actually be concluding.
I think there's only like 30, 40 pages left at this point.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think we're on page 100, funny enough, and there's 130 pages total. So we're nearing the end. We're close.
And so most of the Fremen want to kill them, particularly the one named Jamis, who says they have desecrated the worm. And so Jessica tries to talk her way out of it by naming Paul as the Lisan al-Gaib. There you go, your favorite word.
Lisan al-Gaib.
A messianic figure for the Fremen, but it doesn't really work. So Paul elects to undergo a trial by combat with Jamis, which must be to the death. And so the fight goes on for a bit, and they spill into the mouth of the dead worm, where Paul, who actually with Jessica's crysknife, stabs Jamis to death. I think having them fight in the mouth of the dead worm was also very cool. And so his belongings are divided up. Paul gets the dead guy's water, and Stilgar saves the man's knife for his widow. It's like, by the way, she's your wife now, dude. You keep what you kill.
You're damn right.
And so they distract the worm with a thumper and head off on the sand sled. So in this version, definitively, they do not ride the worms.
Which is so sad.
Which I think they're doing a thing with that, but that's literally like the last line of the script. So I'll come back to that point later. But no, they ride vehicles and they make the worms go the other way.
You're right. We're gonna have to read the sequel to this in script form that definitely exists and got written.
Yep. But they stop for the night where the Fremen inhale spice fumes, which Jessica refuses, but Paul accepts. And they discuss the need for a Fremen name for Paul, and they say he is like Muad'Dib, the desert mouse. So he doesn't choose that name for himself here.
Muad'Dib.
And they continue traveling, coming upon a valley with a ruined city in it, a cave with a thopter parked in it, and an ongoing battle taking place just beyond.
Naturally.
And the cave leads them into a Fremen siege dwelling where Kynes is waiting for them. And he tells Stilgar that he will create a diversion which will help Paul and them journey to Siege Tabor. It's literally Tabor with like an IR at the end. And in the meantime, the Fremen have won this battle and have taken some Harkonnen men hostage, which doesn't go anywhere.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
Kynes and Jessica discuss the legend of the Lisan al-Gaib, which was planted here by the Bene Gesserit long ago. He doesn't know if he believes it himself, but wants to show Paul and Jessica something. Some tunnels lead them to a massive reservoir of water underground, one of thousands, which Kynes says they're collecting to one day make Dune green and plentiful. So yeah, that plot point's here.
Yep, that's present at all.
And so Chani enters the chamber, and Kynes goes like, yeah, that's Jamis' wife. She's now your wife. But I'm not going to explain this to her. You gotta go do that shit. Be a man.
I do not.
Yeah, they combined her with a different character from the book for this part.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and so they she takes it very well, but she refused. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, if you're gonna adapt the book and you're gonna do it in a movie form, Chani's important, and the rest of the Fremen are kind of interchangeable. So you may as well like start scrambling them around and try and do its best here. I don't know if this is what's best, quote unquote, Dune, quote unquote, but I see why they did it.
It's a simple little shortcut. But she refuses the gift of her late husband's water, which Paul then contributes to the tribe by adding to the reservoir. And this gets Stilgar really interested. Insert that gif here, who starts to believe that Paul is in fact the one. And so the next morning, they prepare for the trip. What's going on with my tongue? For the trip to Siege Tabor on board a Sundancer, essentially a solar-powered trimaran that sails over the sand. So they literally have Jabba the Hutt's boat. And Jessica and Paul discuss the situation, with Jessica saying that she is working to see he rules this world, advising him that Chani will be of use now that he's a Fremen. I'm like, ew. And so Kynes and Chani say their goodbyes as she is going with Paul to the Siege, while he is leaving to help unite the tribes, saying that they may be swayed by the word of the Lisan al-Gaib. He tells her to stay close to Paul and show him no ambivalence, while for her part, she's mainly worried about the rift growing between mother and son. And Kynes says, never lose sight of her purpose, saying they'll meet again in 10 days, and sets off on a sand sled. They probably are not going to meet again. He's probably going to get killed.
100. That's exactly what you say when you're gonna die immediately in the next scene. Is, hey, well, we'll talk again in a certain amount of time. I'll tell you everything then. Bye.
He's gonna die in part 2.
100% before. He's probably gonna die off screen.
And so Jessica meets with the Siege's Reverend Mother, who says she will be dying within days, and her skin is now turned a pure translucent white, and her eyes are black, so this has just gotten weirder. And Jessica is the one who will take her place, and even knows that Paul has passed the necessary tests to become the one to shorten the way. And the Reverend Mother says she must pass the water of life to Jessica, and that she will die if not ready. And Jessica admits to having conceived a daughter, so she gets that shit out there immediately in this version. She doesn't hide it.
Yep.
And Reverend Mother is like, well, undergoing the ritual will have risks for the unborn child. However, they have no other choice, and Reverend Mother sends Jessica away until the time comes.
Are you willing to risk an abomination? Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I too will give birth to a green scaly Tim Roth.
Who wouldn't?
And as the Sundancer crosses the desert, a thumper used to draw a worm away from it. Like I pointed out earlier, no worm travel. Paul and Chani discuss their situation, and she wants compassion. He wants acceptance of what he does. And they also talk about how Jessica will become a Reverend Mother, and Chani mentions she would like to possess some of those skills. Then Paul gets really pissy. Your Fremen skills are equal to those, you dumb woman. And she doesn't speak ill of them. She shouldn't speak ill of them.
Yep.
He just fucking mansplains how awesome the Fremen are to her.
Yep.
And here's where it gets fucking weird again.
This is, Jesus, like 5 pages away from the end, and we're already like, oh, let's get weird now. Now let's ramp things up.
So the Sun Dancer takes them to a crater in a cliff in the desert, where the people gather as a Fremen shaman and her attendant. A bald woman with stitched up lips appears for the ceremony. And so the shaman removes her robe, revealing 3 breasts, a muscular, masculine torso, and male genitalia, and sits down in the sand near a water ditch.
Why? Does any of this need to be on screen?
Do all the Fremen have 3 breasts?
Yeah, that's another implication that I don't think the movie actually wants.
Is this planet all just Total Recalls?
In some ways, that's good, but they also all have big dicks. I don't know. There's some people out there that would really enjoy that. That's not me.
I'm like, oh, Chani, are you hiding something?
Oh, no.
That raises more questions. I'm just saying it raises questions.
Good luck having a kid, Paul. You'll get pregnant.
Paul's the one who gets pregnant.
It's just like the concept art.
Paul shits out the children of Dune.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
And so she draws out a stunted 10-foot worm, which is implied to be the Little Maker.
That's what they call it, huh?
Yeah, which her and the attendant take to the water ditch, kill it in the water, turning it blue, which is then gathered into jars, which they now call the Water of Death, which is a term exclusive to this script, I'm pretty sure. Jessica and the Reverend Mother sit down in the middle of the circle, the latter saying if Jessica is really the proper successor, she can turn the liquid into the water of life and open up the universe. If not, it will kill her. You gotta love, the 2 sides of that equation. Open up the universe, fucking die.
Naturally, that makes sense.
And she also says Jessica's daughter will be making her own voyage, and Jessica must use her own strength and courage to draw off the child's fear and save her. And so the Reverend Mother doesn't know what precisely will happen, but says she will be born with a terrible awareness. So basically, she's going to remember the lives of her entire ancestral line, which has consequences in Children of Dune.
Oh, good. So 3 movies from now, or at this pace, 10 movies from now.
Paul then intuits that she's pregnant and speaks his thoughts aloud, which Stilgar hears, which means nothing. Okay, so Jessica drinks the water. Both her and the Reverend Mother have blue auras form around them, which merge. The Reverend Mother passes on her spirited knowledge to Jessica, whose eyes turn blue within blue. She addresses the crowd of Fremen, declaring herself the Reverend Mother and the mother of the Lisan al-Gaib. And so Paul asks Stilgar if he really believes he is this figure, to which he responds that today everyone believes. But this will eventually fade, and then the Lisan al-Gaib will need to do something that no one has ever done before to solidify his position. So to rewind a few pages, they don't ride the worms in this. They make the worms go away with a thumper and then set off on their ridiculous vehicles.
Yep.
I think they're establishing that Paul is going to be, in this version, Paul is going to be the first person to ever ride a worm.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that, because that's the big thing in the book. When he does that, you can't cut that out. But I don't know. I like how that's the Fremen's secret, in the book. That was always a thing, but nobody knew how or why. Whereas Paul learns that. But of course, this script's because Paul already wasn't the ultra mega chosen one in 17 different religions. He has to be even more of the chosen one and do something nobody's ever done before. Whatever.
Yeah, we have to make him even more awesome.
Yep. And also it was clearly established that you could just stop the sandworm with mind powers or something in this story. So I don't know. I feel like Denis' interpretation, you're right, maintains the the regalness and just them as a magnificent beast, whereas this is just oh, they're just a strange plot point. I guess we'll move on.
And it's also because in the book it's mentioned that nobody knows how many Fremen there are or where they are. Mm-hmm. And in this it's they have these huge ass fucking solar powered sand boats and no one can find them.
Yep.
But the whole vehicle thing, dumb. So we are already at the end of this thing. Later, Jessica, now dressed in black robes, lays the body of the Reverend Mother on the sand while Paul, Stilgar, and Chani watch from a nearby dune, with the tribe further behind them. Jessica plants a thumper, which draws in a worm. As the worm emerges from the sand and devours the corpse of the old woman, it ends. Now, that is a metal fucking funeral.
It's a metal fucking ending is what that is.
Yep, and I don't know how I feel about that as the breaking point.
I don't know.
It just it doesn't even give you a hint of to be continued. It just straight up ends.
Yeah, and when you compare it to Dune Part 1, that movie really took its time because it had another movie ready to go in like a few more years. So this is banking for the same thing where like, oh, you're going to guarantee a sequel so you can complete the story. But like, A, what if you don't? B, even if you do, if you know a sequel is coming, why would you rush so much to get to this story that doesn't conclude? Like, why not take your time like Denis did? So I don't know, man. I have a lot of mixed feelings on this script. It started out okay. I was, you know, when they cut straight to Paul's upbringing with the pain box and the training montage after, I was like, okay, well, this is one of the most efficient ways to do the story of Dune if you're going to do this. But I just, now seeing how it ends up, I'm just like, well, I feel like that was all a mistake retroactively. Like, I don't know. Contrast it with 1984's Dune, where they have this huge block of narration that doesn't matter at all, and then cut to giant puppet monsters or whatever the hell's going on. Yeah, I guess it's technically better than that, but like, not by much. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think this version would have been embraced.
No, whether it's by Dune fans or just average movie fans, I don't think anybody's gonna particularly enjoy this interpretation.
No, this also would not have gotten the trilogy.
Who wouldn't have gotten a duology? Yeah.
But I mean, it's just so weird because I have no idea how part 2 is even going to play out because of the changes they made that they need to account for.
Exactly. That's like the whole other thing too. Like, all you know is going to happen is Paul's going to fit the knife fight fade, right? Because that has to happen, and he's going to ride the worm because that's the biggest point in the book. You can't cut that out. That'd be insane.
And there's going to be the whole insurgency.
But differently and vaguely. Like, you don't know the other Emperor character is dead, so like you can't go with that storyline. There's no daughter to go with that we know of yet. I don't know. There's so much. I feel like this is like, 70% the book, 60-70% the book, and like 30% total bullshit. And that ratio is gonna flip when they go to part 2, where it's gonna maintain like 30% of the book. So I don't know. It's a really weird direction to take.
But yeah, it's like I just don't know what they would be able to do.
Well, I guess much in the sense that they could do anything at all.
Because I mean, they can't.
All kinds of bullshit up.
I mean, the whole atomics thing isn't going to be relevant because there is no like cliff wall protecting Arrakis, and I don't know. I mean, it's a readable script. It's a competently written script, but it's just I don't know if this would have played.
Whether it's the 80s or now, like if you took this and like made it today, I don't think either version are getting like widely
like. I think it would have been very well directed, but this would have been closer to Exodus than Blade Runner.
That is an excellent
in terms of Ridley Scott movies.
A scale, a great spectrum to slot it on, and issue it a little more towards Exodus: Gods and Kings with Christian Bale.
I liked this more than Exodus: Gods and Kings.
Whenever someone mentions Exodus: Gods and Kings, the only thing I think of is the Ridley Scott interview where it's like, I can't cast Mohammed so and so. You got to put a named actor in there. Whatever.
But so the reason this didn't happen is there's actually 2 different reasons Ridley Scott has given. Okay, so here's the quote from the book Ridley Scott, The Making of His Movies, which is on the Wikipedia page, where he says, "But after 7 months, I dropped out of Dune. By then, Rudy Wurlitzer had come up with a first draft script, which I felt was a decent distillation of Frank Herbert's. But I also realized Dune was going to take a lot more work, at least 2.5 years worth. I didn't have the heart to attack that because my older brother Frank unexpectedly died of cancer while I was prepping the De Laurentiis picture. Frankly, that freaked me out, so I went to Dino and told him the Dune script was his."
That's strange.
Yeah, basically he didn't want to do it anymore because his brother had passed away, which I can kind of understand.
That makes sense.
But then later on, he gives that infamous 2021 interview where he said that Last Duel bombed because of people on their cell phones.
Yep.
But he gets asked about Dune in that because, Dune Part 1 had just come out, and he talks about how, like, oh, Dino De Laurentiis showed me around, like, the sound stages where you're going to be shooting in Mexico, and they had, like, hard dirt floors. And I said, nope, not going to do that.
Oh, Ridley, you classy son of a bitch.
The sound stages in Mexico City apparently had dirt floors. Yep. Which, to be fair, that's a step up from the also Mexico shot Dragon Ball movie where they shot in a jeans factory. Yes, Dragon Ball Evolution was shot in an abandoned jeans factory in Durango.
All right, well, the reason that comment struck me is because, audience, it's not on the channel yet, but somebody's dealer's choice down the line was Dragon Ball Evolution, and it is recorded. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's so fucking bad.
I've never seen it. I just know that weird fact about it.
Impossible to give it above a 0. There's nothing good. There's literally no part of it is good. Everything was wrong. Everything was bad.
Oh my god. I'm guessing it was Joker's
I will not divulge
pick.
this information, yes.
Oh god, you guys
Some
just hate
days
each
we're at
other. Some
war.
days.
All right. Some days I give them like, good movies or mid movies, and then they hit me with like fucking Jimmy Neutron, which apparently people liked, and then oh man, so I Transmorphers Fall of Man did them.
Yeah,
I did.
you
I
also
did both.
Transmorphers.
They needed it twice. They needed to learn their lesson, and I got like 3 more that Asylum has made since. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my god! So Dune,
How you doing?
how you doing?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, significantly better than David Lynch's, significantly worse than Denis. If this had come out in theaters, I can't see myself giving it higher than like a 4 out of 10. It's so middle of the road, leaning negative. I don't really get anything out of it. Like, unless the action is just so amazing. I really enjoyed those endless pages where people just kept coming into the room and dying. That was really fun for me. I enjoyed that. But aside from that,
and all the scenes of Dune,
yeah, never enough of that, please.
Like that's like everybody. UA gets cut in half. Duncan gets cut in half. I'm sure most of the friggin' like
it's called a
guys
motif,
get cut
a
in
leitmotif, when the guy who's been cutting everyone in half finally dies by getting cut in half. That is called art, my friend. So anyway, that like 5-10 minutes of the script is like, brilliant. Don't change a thing. Absolutely great. But aside
hilarious.
From that, there's nothing here in this interpretation that I don't get from better adaptations, mostly Denis. So I don't know if this was particularly done that well.
I mean, it's okay. I would say it's okay.
Yeah, it's not the worst. Like I said, I appreciate some pacing things, but retroactively I kind of look less favorably upon those because the script ended up being half a movie anyway. So I don't get what the point was of rushing so much.
Yeah, and it's just like, and that was apparently another one of Frank Herbert's complaints, is that he felt it was oversimplified.
Oh, Frank Herbert read this?
Yes, he did. He also, Frank Herbert read this. He said it was oversimplified, and he also read the draft that had the incest in it. Apparently,
when did Frank Herbert die?
He saw the Lynch movie, so it would have been 85, 86.
Wow, he saw Lynch movie and then died shortly after that.
He liked the Lynch movie.
He liked the Lynch movie?
Yes, I think he just liked it because so much of his dialogue was in the movie. I think after all the weird shit all the other directors were trying to do, I think he was just happy that it was like somewhat on point.
I mean, maybe I'm sure if you screened the 4-hour cut of Dune 1984 that Lynch had before it was studioed to death, maybe that'd be like the best adaptation ever. I don't know, but yeah, no, I don't know. That's rough.
Yes, and he also died without actually finishing the book series because he was planning a book 7 to wrap everything up. And then he died before he wrote it.
Mm-hmm. Well, his kids continued stuff, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, his son and one of the guys who writes Star Wars Extended Universe novels wrote a shitload of prequels, which are not supposed to be very good. They rarely range from okay to, oh my god, what the hell.
Naturally, yep.
But I think this script has a similar problem to the Lynch movie, in that this would be extremely confusing for regular audience members, but for a different reason, because that movie just throws all the information at you and is just throwing shit at you without any context. This doesn't give you a lot at all.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. And there's even like like you were saying, like they reference like bits of dialogue that aren't in the book that reference things that you don't see on screen. And it's like, was the book not world buildy and weird enough for you that you have to like do your own thing after cutting everything else out? Couldn't you have stuck a little closer to it? And I don't know, at least made like a little bit of sense with the continuity and things like that, but whatever.
At least kept the Emperor.
Mm-hmm. Significant plot point, the Emperor.
Significant plot point, the Emperor. Don't throw in mediums and committees of 7 that you're not going to explain.
Oh, man. Nothing makes sense.
Like, what even would be the committee of 7? I can't even think of anything.
No, in the Dune world, no, none of it made sense.
Yeah, this is a weird. I'm trying to figure out a way to end this episode that isn't just ending it like the script did.
Tune in for the second half of this episode, which will never get written or produced in any way.
But yeah, so the whole thing, it went to David Lynch. That movie bombed, and that's how Dune just became this legendarily unfilmable thing. Was because you had all these versions in the late 70s into the early 80s, and the one that gets made doesn't work.
Of course.
And then you don't get anything until the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, which are flawed, but they're at least respectable adaptations in a sense.
They're flawed and they're very low budget. I say that having seen only the knife fight and nothing else.
And the second one has a higher budget. Like, it actually looks like respectable for like 2003 TV. Yeah, so then you get those two miniseries, and I kind of wish they had kept going and done God Emperor of Dune, also with James McAvoy, because I know he would have done it. Like, he would have been so on board for that.
Yep.
But apparently there was like the changeover at Sci-Fi Channel, which eventually ended in the rebranding and Sci-Fi Channel being really shitty for a lot of years. They basically lost interest in doing prestige projects.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a shame because they had some good shit back in the day, and then they just gave up. And then eventually, you had the Dune movie rights. They go to Paramount in 2008 when Peter Berg, he of all the Mark Wahlberg movies of late, was going to direct it. And then he ended up leaving, and then it went to the guy who did the first Taken.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then he gave up, but then that didn't happen. Paramount gave up, the rights lapsed, and then they go to Legendary, and that eventually becomes the two movies we got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. It's just been bounced around, and people keep attempting to adapt it, and it's just... people called Dune unfilmable for a while. It's super filmable. Like, even before Denis Villeneuve did his thing, like, there's definitely a story in there where it's like, this could be so cinematic. But I guess just the translation, like the adaptation, getting it into a different medium was just so difficult for a lot of filmmakers.
Yeah, I think it's because there's so much in the book, and I think it's just the question of what do you pick and choose?
What do you pick and choose, and how do you make it, like, interesting and relevant to a modern audience who... say, because not everyone is the kind of person to sit down and read a book the size of a brick.
I mean, Jodorowsky allegedly randomly picked up the book at a store and then read it in one sitting at a cafe.
What, does he own the cafe? Was he there all day?
It was apparently the middle of the night. He just showed up at like an all-night cafe in Paris and just read the fucking book.
I guess that makes sense. It would be an all-night cafe. It'd have to be.
I just imagine that, like, how much speed would you have to be on to do that?
Oh my god. That's crazy.
Yeah, but so, I mean, Dune did get a happy ending eventually.
Yes, the happiest ending. The best possible ending, because those movies are crazy. Crazy good.
Crazy good. Both nominated for Best Picture. Both of them probably not going to win.
Oh, 100%. No. It came out too far away. The small-brained Oscar voters simply cannot remember things more than 1 month ago.
But yeah, we're just bullshitting and stalling at this point.
I know. It's just... I wish the script were either really great or really bad, because both types of scripts that could be would get me really excited to talk about it. But it's not. It's just a slightly worse than mid adaptation that I would not have enjoyed seeing.
I mean, if it was well made, it would probably be something that like people remember. Because I mean, even Lynch's Dune has a fan base.
That is true. That is a good point.
But yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. It was interesting to read for the first time because it's like, oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're doing this. But when you sit down and talk about it, there's less to it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It like, again, like the first act, pacing aside, they did some interesting narrative things, and then it's just, I think it just kind of fell off a cliff.
Literally, there were some cliffs in this.
Absolutely.
It fell into the crater with the weird intersex shaman.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think it's a good idea to cut it there, though.
All right, fair enough. Well, hey, look, this has been a treasure as always. I really hope that next time we get a better script or a significantly worse script, both would be significantly exciting.
I'm gonna make you read those mummy scripts again.
Oh my god, I could not bring myself to do them until I finally did. It took like months of delays.
I bet you that shit like years in advance, and you were like, no. And then it got delayed. It got delayed for many reasons. A lot of them on my end.
Absolutely. But oh well. Jesus. Whatever.
But yeah, that was Ridley Scott's Dune. It was interesting to read, but not as interesting to talk about.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad we have this knowledge now. At least we know what it was.
Yes, at least we got an idea as to how it was being adapted back in the day compared to now.
Part of me almost wishes that this was the incest draft, because that would have been something.
That would have had a significant talking point towards the end.
We would have been like, wow, he's a motherfucker. And then...
Man, it's so much worse than a motherfucker.
Total Recall.
Oh, jeez. How would they even portray that? Oh, my God. I don't even want to think about that. Ugh.
I mean, like people like us. Alex Kurtzman's Dune. And that is the perfect note to end on. So
me making Dune noises.
Me bringing Alex Kurtzman into the conversation.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, read better scripts than Dune 1980.
Yep, the next one will probably be a better script next episode.
Yeah. All right, bye.
Bye.